Authenticity, what is it? The quality of being real or genuine. But how can you be that if you don't know who you are? Growing up, I was raised in northern Indiana. I come from a family of migrant workers on both sides of my family. And growing up, I never really knew how to identify. My family was from South Texas. I wasn't Tejana, I wasn't Latina, I wasn't Mexicana, I wasn't Chicana, I was Hispanic. And that led to a lot of confusion for me. I didn't know how to identify with my culture or with my people, and it was really confusing because, my grandmother was from Texas, and she took a lot of pride in saying that her birth certificate said that she was white because she was born in 1933, and back then it was just black and white. And so she had a heavy accent. We spoke the language of Mexicans, we ate the food, also followed some of the traditions, and I still didn't know who I was. And in school, I was like too white for the Mexicans and not quite Mexican enough for my white friends. So, having light brown skin was a big difference with some of the kids who didn't speak English. And, so I was lighter skinned, I spoke fluent English and broken Spanish, and I didn't really know where to belong. And I also was raised in like a fairly racist home and a lot of prejudice as well, and I just never really felt a connection to my immediate family somehow. And for so long in my entire life, I had this longing to really connect with people of color, of all colors, more importantly, Mexican kids growing up. And I just wanted them to know that I could see them, I saw them, I wanted to be a part of their group, I wanted to connect. But because of that language barrier, it just wasn't something that I felt confident doing. So carrying on, I would visit South Texas growing up, and even then, it was just I felt a stronger connection. My family's from West Loco, Texas, which is basically in the Rio Grande Valley, the most southern tip of Texas that you can get. And so when I would visit, I would see my dad's side of the family, and we'd go to the Mexican markets, and I would just see the art and, my first introduction to Mexican street food, like agua fresca and, elotes, things like that. I never really grew up eating. And so that was a really special time for me growing up. And then, my mom ended up marrying into a family from Guadalajara, so I was then introduced to more of the Mexican culture and the food, and I fell in love with the food because it was nothing I grew up eating. My grandma would make Tex-Mex food, which is hard shell tacos, flour tortillas, but it was legit. It wasn't old El Paso. It was legit. It was Tex-Mex. The flavors were there. She was a great cook. But sometimes she was just cooking Betty Crocker recipes. I feel like she really wanted to kind of be outside of that Mexican, I guess, name. And so I also, my dad's sister, I called her Aunt Mary growing up. And to be really honest, I didn't know if she was Mexican or white. I couldn't tell the difference because she spoke fluently white and she cooked, the best white people food I've ever had in my life, which I crave to this day. And her name's Maria. She goes by Maria now. So that said, I just so badly wanted to connect with my culture and my people, but it was stripped away from me before I was even born. Just the American dream, I guess. You're a migrant worker, you land in northern Indiana, which is a place most people either leave if they're fortunate enough to or drive through. So, I think the way that I connect with my culture now is through food. I love cooking. I know how to make all the things that I want to make, and I, just pozole, tamales, arroz and frijoles, tortillas, all the food, carne guisada. If you guys need somebody to cater, just hit me up. And also just Mexican music. The first time I'd ever heard a mariachi band was actually at my mom's wedding. And I was just so fascinated just by the sounds and just like the rhythm, just everything about it, you know, like learning how to cumbia, just dancing, going to bailes and stuff. And so that was just, you know, just connection to music and food and just speaking Spanish every opportunity that I have. Like, I want people to know like where I come from, and I want to know where I come from. And, you know, after the years of just growing up and becoming an adult, it's just, you know, I feel so strongly who I am, and nobody can tell me otherwise. I ended up doing a 23andMe like 7 or 8 years ago, just out of curiosity, you know, and there's two really high percentages of where you come from. And the first one was Native American, which is awesome. And then the second highest percentage was East Asian, which I thought was very interesting. So I don't know a lot about my ancestry at all, but I think ultimately authenticity to me is like really like owning who I am as an adult and really feeling who I am as an adult and with my culture. And with all the shit that's going on right now, like I've been tearing up the last like week, like because I work with Mexicans and they're hard workers and they're amazing and they're hilarious and they're so super funny, but like going into work just like, man, like I'm like, man, I love you, I feel for you, and like I am one of you too, you know. I just wish that I grew up more immersed with my culture. And so in the end, you know, the DNA test, it's great, like cool, it's good to hear that, but like nobody can tell me who I am. Not my friends, not my family, like nobody. Like all I have to do is look into the mirror, and it's in my cheekbones, it's in the shape of my eyes. I see it in my mother, I see it in my father. And you know, that to me is just really being my authentic self and not having to hear it from somebody else's mouth. So, viva la raza.